Beautiful, isn't she? James thought to himself, then quickly shook his head, muttering under his breath, "This is my sister-in-law. What am I thinking?" But that feeling, a mix of longing and fear, had quietly sparked in his heart from that very moment. What I've just shared is a snippet of a story I'd like to tell you all, something that happened back when I was still in school. Even now, recalling it makes me flush hot and red all over. I've titled this tale The Lovely Young Sister-in-Law. I hope it brings you a few moments of relaxation. Don't forget to hit like, leave a comment, and subscribe to the channel to support us and hear more stories to come. Now, let's dive into the heart of this tale together. The villa sat quietly along a narrow suburban lane, where rows of lush green trees cast cool shade year-round. It wasn't overly grand, but an air of elegance emanated from its pristine white walls, red-tiled roof, and the sprawling front garden filled with meticulously tended plants. There was a faux pine tree spreading its branches like a giant umbrella, a few hanging orchid pots dangling under the eaves, bursting with vibrant purple blooms and a sweet fragrance, and in the middle of the garden, a small fish pond glimmered under the sun. Goldfish darted back and forth, adding a touch of serenity to the scene. This was the home of James and Clara, where they lived with their little daughter, Lily, now nearly 4 years old. From the outside, anyone would assume this family had it all: happiness, comfort, and plenty. But inside James's heart, things were no longer as they once were. James had just turned 35, a tall man with a tanned complexion. His sharp features included bright eyes and a straight, prominent nose. He ran a woodworking and furniture business, a stable job that brought in good money, enough to buy this villa after nearly a decade of saving with his wife. Back in the day, he and Clara had been madly in love, marrying with the blessings of both families and welcoming their chubby, adorable daughter. But since Lily's birth, the spark between them had faded. Their intimacy, once a fire that warmed their marriage, had become as rare as rain in a drought. James still loved Clara, still cherished her gentle, hard-working nature. Yet he couldn't deny that their married life had grown dull. Missing the passion he craved, Clara, 3 years younger than James, was a kind and attentive woman. Standing about 5'3", her figure had filled out since childbirth. Her fair skin, though no longer as taut as in her youth, remained smooth. Her long black hair was often tied neatly at the nape of her neck, framing an oval face with gentle eyes and a small, smiling mouth. She worked as an accountant for a construction firm, a busy but steady job that helped support the family alongside James. Since Lily came along, Clara had thrown herself into motherhood and work, leaving little time to care for herself or notice her husband's needs. Whenever James tried to get close, she'd give a faint smile. "Honey, I'm tired. Let me sleep a bit." Then she'd turn over and snore softly, leaving him restless in the dead of night. James didn't blame her, but the emptiness inside him roared louder each day, like a small flame no one bothered to extinguish. Their life might have drifted on in that quiet monotony forever, until one late autumn afternoon when Sophie, Clara's younger sister, arrived. At 22, a third-year university student, Sophie was a stunning young woman whose charm turned heads wherever she went. She stood 5'5", with rosy fair skin like peach blossoms and a perfectly balanced figure that rivaled any model on TV. Her glossy hair, slightly curled at the ends, cascaded loosely over her shoulders. Her large, sparkling eyes shimmered like an autumn lake, and her full lips always wore a hint of pink gloss. Sophie had a natural allure, a captivating presence that didn't even require effort to stir hearts. She came to stay with her sister and brother-in-law to be closer to her university, which was nearly 100 miles from her parents' home, while James and Clara's villa was just a 15-minute drive away. The day Sophie arrived, James was out in the garden watering the orchids. Dressed in an old t-shirt and shorts, he was sweating under the afternoon sun. Sophie stepped out of a taxi, pulling a small suitcase behind her, wearing a light yellow maxi dress that hugged her frame. The hem fluttered in the breeze, revealing long, alabaster legs. "James." "I'm here," she called, her clear voice ringing through the garden. James looked up, momentarily stunned by the sight of her. "Oh, Sophie, is it? Come on in, I'll grab your bag," he replied, his tone a little awkward as he set the watering can down and stepped forward to help. Sophie flashed a bright smile, tinged with a hint of mischief. "Thanks, brother-in-law. You're strong, huh?" James nodded, saying nothing more, though his eyes stole a quick glance at her, his heart stirring with unease. Clara emerged from the house and enveloped her sister in a warm hug. "Sophie, you're here. I've missed you so much." The sisters laughed and chatted animatedly as they headed inside, leaving James in the yard with the suitcase. He watched Sophie's graceful figure retreat, her yellow dress swaying, accentuating her slim waist and full hips. "Beautiful, isn't she?" he thought again, then shook his head sharply. "She's my sister-in-law." "Stop it." But that flicker of desire, tinged with dread, had already taken root in his chest. At first, James and Sophie's relationship was innocent, nothing more than a brother-in-law and sister-in-law. Sophie settled into the small room next to Lily's, heading to classes each day and helping Clara with chores when she returned. James kept up his routine, working and coming home to dinner with his wife and daughter, barely paying Sophie much mind. But her natural charm and subtle, unintentional gestures gradually shifted his perspective. One evening, she lounged in a thin spaghetti strap top watching TV, her bare shoulders glowing under the lamplight. James glanced over, then quickly looked away. Another time, in the kitchen, her hand brushed his as she handed him a bowl of stew, her voice sweet. "James, have some more, I made it." He nodded, forcing a smile. "Yeah, it's good." But inside, his heart fluttered, unsettled by how a simple touch quickened his pulse. Clara noticed nothing, delighted to have her sister around to share the load. But James, lying beside his sleeping wife at night, began to think of Sophie, her eyes, her smile, the captivating way she carried herself, impossible to forget. He knew it was wrong, knew he shouldn't. Yet the longing within him, the void Clara couldn't fill, grew louder with every day Sophie stayed.